Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Talk Data to Me. I've got Luan Reineck from Snowflake joining me. Before we get into this, I haven't been doing these for a while, and I probably wasn't going to start a podcast series again, but it was actually Luan who was in South Africa a week before last for the Snowflake launch, said to me over a drink, man, what's happening? When are we going to get the podcast back? So big thanks to Luan for pushing me to do this, and colleague Chadney for coming up with the slightly cheeky name of Talk Data to Me. So Luan, how's it going? Thanks again for prompting me to do this, and thanks for being on the show.
No, you're most welcome. Thanks so much, Greg. I think we all missed it, and I think the community got so much value out of it that these are long overdue. And thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No, absolutely. So you're based in Dubai. For everybody watching this, that is obviously a virtual background. It doesn't snow very often, if at all, in Dubai. So going with the snowflake theme in the background there.
Trying to make it snow. Trying to make it snow in the desert.
Absolutely, good stuff. So I think that's maybe the big point. You recently joined Snowflake, sales director looking after South Africa, based in Dubai. For everybody listening, Luan's from Cape Town. So you look after the South African market. That's pretty exciting. A nice new move.
Yeah, it is. I mean, South Africa's always been within the remit within some way, shape, or form. I've been in Dubai for 13 years, but there's always been some activity and engagement, at least from my end, within the South African market. And I think from a Snowflake perspective, it's super exciting. I mean, as you mentioned, we had our events both in Cape Town and Joburg some 2 weeks ago there, and the feedback, the attendance, the energy. The inquiries, it's amazing. So, we're really, really excited to have a focused team and a focused effort dedicated solely to South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Snowflake is a pretty exciting platform. Anybody watching, I want to know more. We won't deep dive into it here, but reach out to Luan or the team at Snowflake if you want to get a little bit more around their data cloud and what's being called the rocket ship of data platforms. All right.
Exactly.
So,
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Luan, maybe if I can just get your thoughts, you're someone who deals with a lot of companies, different size organizations, etc. What is your current sort of take on the state of the data analytics market from a maturity perspective, a transformation perspective within South Africa?
I think the operative word is I guess maturity and kind of at what level.
Yeah.
The organizations that we're speaking to and with that are incredibly mature, and others that are just starting their journey. I think the common denominator is that everybody's made peace and realization with the fact that the cloud is no longer nice to have. The cloud is no longer considered a strategic initiative. It's a must-have. It's and if you're not there, you have to be there.
Yeah.
In terms of sort of collaboration, across organizations, again, some are doing it really, really well. Some are getting there. But I think what's really, really encouraging to hear when we speak with with our customers and other organizations is just how aware organizations, people, and the vast majority of personnel are. In terms of what the kind of business value that can be enabled through scaling mass collaboration, not just within the organization, but across the entire value chain from partners and vendors and customers. So it's definitely getting there, and I think it's accelerating really, really fast. I think the speed at which it was taking root, I would say over the last 12-18 months versus the last 6 months, is unbelievable. Sort of 5-6x on the uptake on that.
Yeah, and what do you think the catalyst is for that speed? Is it sort of just kind of coming to that critical point where it's been this build up, the awareness, as you say, the understanding of the value, obviously the technology that's coming in that's allowing it to scale really quickly? What are some of the sort of, I guess, the catalyst factors that you've seen or that you think are driving the sort of growth of this market now?
I think it's I don't know if acceptance is too strong of a word, but I think it's realization that the conversation needs to be opened up to a little bit more than just the normal folk who wear the data hats. Those that are in strategic positions, those that are within the IT function, those that are within BI. I think organizations, across, up and down the ladder and across the org are realizing that, every individual, every department, every BU, every, line of business has a valuable input when it comes to the data conversation. Yeah. And I think those conversations are really starting to take root. And businesses actually are starting to understand that, look, if I can put data, at speed, in the right hands, with the right people who have those business questions, here's the impact. It's no longer somebody just saying, well, I'm increasing efficiency by 2 hours. Yeah, you are doing that, but now you're doing it across 250 people every day. And, so it's that multiplier effect that I think people are really starting to understand that, this is why this needs to be a priority for our business. Yeah.
And are you seeing, I had Maloko Komani from MultiChoice on an episode recently, and we're talking about an insights-driven organization. Obviously, everyone's data-driven, data-centric, etc. But ultimately, what you want to be is insights-driven, right? So you can you've got the data, you've got the models, the analytics that comes out, and the insights, and getting business to actually adopt those, trust those, use those, want more. Are you finding that that's where people are kind of getting to now, where, as you say, across business units, whether it be finance or marketing, or sales or ops, whatever it may be, they're actually using the insights that they've kind of co-created with the data teams, and that's driving the business forward?
Yeah, 100%. And maybe I'd go one step further and to say that, we've all heard, exactly as you said, data-driven, insights-driven, which is, 100% correct, but that all couples up or, to decision-making, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, I think, again, completely agree with what you said in terms of, those insights, taking those insights, trusting those insights is incredibly important as well. It's one thing opening up the conversation, opening up the collaboration, but if, you're not trusting the data, if you're not trusting the method in which the data was transmitted and received, again, can those insights actually be actioned on, and can decisions be taken, from there? So exactly right.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about the cloud, and we don't need to go into specifics around Snowflake. As I said, people can reach out to you, but as you said, people need to be moving into the cloud. The cloud migration is almost essential for business success, business survival. What are some of the things that are holding organizations back still from moving, everything to the cloud, partially to the cloud? There's obviously different cloud models that you can go for. What are you seeing some of the, the hesitancies as you talk to people in the market?
Yeah, I think, it's a funny question, good question, and it's a crappy answer, but I think it depends on who you ask, right? Where, someone, security is a big concern. Obviously, and depending on, what industry, what vertical, there's, either internal mandates or it's regulated industry regulation, imposed by government. The other element is, I think there's also a lot of, paralysis by analysis. We need to get the strategy right. We need to get the security right. We need to get the governance right. We need to get the collaboration, which is all completely correct. But I think the challenge sometimes is that, by I don't want to say overthinking, but trying to cross every T and dot every I across the entire chain before making a move is, also detrimental to the business. So I think, what we're seeing in our conversations and companies that are excelling, and organizations that were hesitant that are now, really accelerating this drive, for them, the realization has come into, speed, scalability, and security. All right. And you need all three of those. Now, at what level within the organization you're at in terms of how mature each of those, pillars are, is, determined on internal factors, sometimes external. But I think the realization is that, look, we need to be comfortable that we're providing our business with insights and data at speed. We are doing it across the value chain, and not just internally in the business, but also, externally with partners, which is becoming a huge topic of conversation, with our customers, is that how do we collaborate? How do we involve our partners and our vendors within the data ecosystem? And then, of course, the security, which is a no-brainer, that has to be done.
Yeah, and it's a big thing. We had our security leaders exchange event last week with big group of CISOs, and cloud security is one of the big issues. And I think the talk is about, similar to what you're saying about the collaboration, it's a bit of a team sport. It mustn't just be an IT or strategic decision to go to the cloud. You need to involve the security, cybersecurity teams, data governance side of things, the data privacy and protection, the end user who's going to be using these things. The cloud is not sort of a decision, it seems, that is, beholden to one person within the organization. It's something that needs to be driven, by someone, but it needs to be a collaborative effort to get there successfully.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you get that mix right, you see, crazy and massive acceleration. I think some of the challenges are, your typical too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Kind of situation where somebody does need to own it, but strong alignment and collaboration with business, IT, finance needs to be the name of the game.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. All right, so talking about collaboration, maybe a good segue into sort of one of the key things we wanted to talk about today is this sort of, I say concept, it's not a concept, it's a thing you do, but data sharing across platforms, data accessibility, and not just internally, but externally as well between various partners. What sort of growth are you seeing in this area? I mean, at our Data Leaders Exchange event last month, it was a big panel discussion, this whole thing of data monetization through internal monetization, but also this exchange of data. Where are you seeing the sort of changes within this environment?
I think the people never knew, or organizations rather, never knew how much value, how much of an asset data was until, and I wouldn't say fairly recently, but I think that's really starting to take roots in organizations. Not just the fact that they can monetize data, not just the fact that, it's something that's useful for their business, and sharing and collaborating with partners and vendors adds value to their organization, but also internally. I was privileged rather to be part of a discussion, a couple of weeks back, just before the Formula One season started. I'm a huge F1 fundi, and it was with I won't mention the team, but really, really smart guys, and what they were talking about, the topic revolved around how Formula One is, really, really impacted the teams by the spend cap that they've put in place. So that has forced them to really, really start collaborating and looking, across the value chain where improvements can be made using data and analytics. And it starts at the point, and I was just absolutely fascinated by this, where one of the teams was telling that over a Grand Prix weekend, they simulate 300,000 race outcomes. Over that 72 hours of the weekend. And with that data, depending on what happens at this corner with this driver at this lap at this particular time, part of that data is actually shared within their supply network, because if they need parts for the next Grand Prix, and if it's back to back, et cetera, and how this, the sort of snowball effect on how it goes across the chain. So, the whole data ecosystem, data market, data sharing is absolutely huge. And I think companies that are adopting it, that are listening to, that are inquisitive about it, are really, really going to be seeing the benefits, not just from a direct impact on their, within their vendor sphere and within their ecosystem, but also the ability to monetize what they have. And it's not just lines on the screen. It's an actual asset that organizations are monetizing. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, those simulations are insane. I mean, it's amazing still how they get it wrong on the day. Anything can happen.
Exactly.
Which is so great.
Run out of fuel,
exactly. Or some fuel line pops off or something like that. So I think in that sort of environment of data sharing stuff, the conversations I've heard with people is they can see the value. There's massive value there. I guess they worried a little bit around privacy and protection of data, who's liable for the, and responsible for the protection of that data once it goes into the platform. No platform like Omniscient is quite decent around, or secure by design. Is that some of the things where you see maybe a stumbling block to really unlocking mass data sharing? I would assume in that Formula One environment, it's such a sterile, high-tech type environment that all the checks and balances are in place. But when people are just starting to share, in other formats, I think things could go wrong. Maybe I'm just going to share an Excel spreadsheet. That's sharing. What are you seeing as some of the protection measures that are put in place to ensure that data sharing can happen, but in like an anonymized and safe, ethical way?
Yeah, look, I mean, all those, the cloud providers and the platform, generally speaking, those mechanisms are in place. And I think the main, hindrance and obstacle for organizations in having these conversations is be open to change. And it's not a question changing or deviating from your standards. No, if not, your standards rise and increase, and it's more, with tokenization and anonymization and things like that, more often than not, better protections can be provided. But I think it's about, being open to the cloud, being open to actually understanding what does this mean for the business without compromising on security, without compromising on protection. That I would say solves 80 to 90%. Getting to the point of having that conversation is often, the biggest challenge. Once there's understanding, once there's, the critical questions are answered and with comfort, then things happen. But I think it's just a question of, be open to the new technology. What was done 3, 4, 5 years ago is not necessarily what's done today. So, things are moving incredibly fast. Things are getting better, and things are getting far more secure.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So I think in closing, we want to talk a little bit about what to do with data. Now, I just recorded recently an episode with Sizwe Gwala from ABSA, and we're already talking about the amount of data that's being generated. And this is not something that, we kind of very ingeniously came up with. It's just a common fact. Businesses are just generating huge amounts of data. What can companies do with data? It seems like a very obvious question. But what do they do with all this data? For maybe speaking out to people that are listening that are more from a business perspective rather than from the data side, maybe evangelize a little bit around what can we do with all the data?
I think the most, I can talk for hours on this. I'm trying to summarize this here quickly.
A couple of minutes.
I think from a data perspective, especially from a business side, there's past, present, future, hindsight, insight, foresight, right? And depending on what your business question is or was going to be, you need to pivot towards the information that can best serve that business use case, can best help form the hypothesis, and can best, deliver the value or expected value you want to derive from the data or the subset of data or information you have available to you. So I think the most important things for business to be doing is asking more questions. All right. I think, the status quo of, this is the information we have, or that I know we have, so that's all I'm going to be working with, is, is not the way to accelerate this kind of transformation and scalability. So I think, the number one takeaway is, why and why not? Why we're doing it this way, why not another way? And so more why questions is really what's going to help drive and uncover and unlock that information that, 95% of the companies already have. They're just not tapping into it, which is the crazy thing. They already have that information, but nobody's really, asking enough questions. And again, that collaboration across the business in terms of listening and having that input, because as I said in the beginning, everybody throughout the organization has got some input in terms of which they can provide in terms of how to drive better data, decisions, insights, and ultimately collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we could probably do another whole episode on things like alternate data. I had a conversation with Matthew Bernath, who you know as well, around that. So I think maybe we'll say that for another day. Maybe we'll get Matthew on episode as well, and the three of us can kind of dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, I'd love that.
Alternate data sources. No, thanks so much for joining me. It's been awesome to catch up. Hope to see you in Joburg in the not too distant future.
Very soon. Look forward to it, Craig. And thanks so much for having me. And thanks for reigniting this. This is a wonderful series for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of credit goes to you. So there we go, everybody. Episode wrapped with Luan Reineck from Snowflake. As I said, catch up with him if you want to know a little bit more about Snowflake.